If we do make people less well off by making energy much more expensive, by restricting fossil fuel use like unreasonably, let's say, or by not pursuing nuclear power, for example, as an alternative, the major consequence of that will be that a lot of poor people who are right on the edge, and there's lots of them, are poorer than they need to be and will be, off the edge. And the consequence of that is, as you already pointed out, that if anything untoward does happen on the weather front, they're going to be much more vulnerable to that. Distinguishing between infrastructure inadequacy and weather catastrophe is very, very difficult. Even when Katrina hit New Orleans, you could say that it was a natural disaster, but you could also say it was an abject failure of planning, because the Army Corps of Engineer dikes were only designed to withstand a 1 in 100-year storm, whereas when the Dutch built dikes, they designed them to withstand a 1 in 10,000-year storm. So whether that was a natural disaster or a consequence of human foolishness is not precisely obvious. And the same thing applies on the energy front. If we impoverish the already poor by making energy expensive, not only do we expose them to much more risk to life and limb, let's say, and property, but we also decrease the probability that those self-same people are going to be able to take an environmentally oriented view, because the data indicates that if you can get people up to producing or benefiting from economic growth to the tune of about $5,000 a year in average GDP, then they start to take a medium to long-term view of the future and start to attend much more carefully to what you might describe as environmental concerns. So panicking about climate in the way that we're doing, if the consequence is to raise energy prices and impoverish people, looks like it's going to kill more people, first, because they'll be more vulnerable, and second, that it's going to deliver us far fewer people who are capable of taking the kind of medium to long-term view of sustainability that would be actually beneficial to producing a more livable planet. And I still want to ask your opinion about the greening.
The greening's happening. I think it's attributed mostly to carbon dioxide, but also more rainfall and warmer temperatures help. So the greening is definitely a benefit. That the greening is happening over a big portion of the globe, actually. So it's clearly a benefit.
Well, it's also so perverse, because one of the, it's perverse is the fact that the Americans decreased their carbon output by returning to fracking. Nobody predicted that. But here we have a situation where not only is the planet not getting browner and drier, which was the apocalyptic vision, but many of the areas that were really brown and dry, like the southern edge of the Sahara Desert, are actually seeing the ingress of vegetation in a manner that's, unprecedented even up to 15 years ago. And so, not only is that not what was predicted, it's the very opposite of what's predicted. And it's the opposite in a very, very massive manner. 15% increase in greening is it's almost beyond comprehension. As I said, that's an area bigger than the continental United States. And then to say as well that that's also produced quite an increment in the productivity of human crops and enabled us to grow more food in less area. It's like those are facts that need to be taken with dead seriousness. They're very positive. Perhaps, you could argue that maybe that rate of vegetation change brings with it threats that we haven't yet envisioned, and that could be the case. But nonetheless, it certainly isn't the spreading of the deserts that we were led to be apprehensive of.
Well, that's correct. Again, the framing of this, going back to 1992, was around dangerous anthropogenic interference in the climate system. So the focus was on dangers. They were looking for dangers. The benefits, weren't even acknowledged until maybe the fifth assessment report in the IPCC. Everything, they were just looking for dangers, that there was no counterweight of the benefits. So
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And no cost-benefit analysis. I mean, I've talked to Bjorn Lomborg a lot.
Yeah.
And the reason for that was that I looked through all the data that you're describing for a long period of time. One of the things that struck me as well about the multiplicity of goals that the UN was hypothetically pursuing was that no one was assessing these risks and benefits in any systematic manner, ranking them. And then I came across Lomborg's work, and he tried to do a cost-benefit analysis, looking at our capacity to adapt and ranking the problems that face us in terms of their severity, and also what we could do about those problems in some effective manner. And like Lomborg, like you, accepts the IPCC prognostications of a mild warming trend over the next 100 years, but he's done calculations showing that the net consequence of that, even if it is somewhat detrimental economically, if we factor all those costs into account, is that we'll be more rich than we would otherwise be, right? Because our GDP is going to increase something like 400% on average in the next 100 years. And one of the negative consequences of global warming will be that it'll be slightly less than 400%. And that it's clear that we can manage that in any real sense, and that we're very good at adapting to a huge range of weather situations and climate scenarios. Some of us live in damn near Arctic conditions, and other people live in the desert. And so it's not outside the realm of human adaptation to adapt to a 1 or 2 degree climate transformation. And animals should be able to do the same, assuming that we don't, that we're reasonably intelligent on the environmental conservation front. And so, I don't know, are you aware of Lomborg's work?
Oh,
what
yeah.
do you think of?
Oh, yeah. No, Bjorn and I are in close contact, and I'm very well aware of what he's doing. And he's doing a very good job of making those points. The thing that, the UN has the 17 sustainability goals. I think the first one is to eliminate poverty. The second one is to eliminate hunger. Maybe number 7 is affordable energy for all. And then number 13 is climate action. And you've got to wonder, how did climate action, even one piece of that, which is, elimination of fossil fuels, come to trump elimination of poverty and elimination of hunger? Development aid from the UN, from the World Bank, and whatever is now focused on mitigation. The traditional objectives of economic development and help with adaptation, those are put on the back burner.
Right. That's insane.
In favor of mitigation.
Yeah.
And this is making
that's insane.
This is making people less well off, and we're squandering opportunities for human development, and for senseless objectives that aren't expected to improve anyone's life over the course of the 21st century and could very well make us all worse off.